I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. What if the story your brand tells could drive growth like nothing else? Park Howell, the world's most industrious storyteller, Emmy-winning ad veteran, and author of Brand Bewitchery, shows how narrative-first leaders succeed in the age of AI. As host of the Business of Story podcast and creator of the StoryCycle Genie, he's helping brands craft powerful stories in minutes, not months. My interview with Park is coming right up. But first,
you enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with the great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio.
Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at RE Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
Park Howell, welcome back to On Brand.
Nick, it's great to be here. It's been a while. It's been a minute, as they say.
That was going to be part of my my rigorous podcast guest research was to look that up. But I feel like it's probably been close to. I've been doing the show for 10 years, and I feel like I remember talking to you in that first year. But you, as we talk about story, I think the brand that you've built around the business of story is one that I look to and is certainly aptly named. We were talking a bit in the pre-show, and I said I can't ask you anymore because this is the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. Because in my work in and around story, I often joke with colleagues at the University of Iowa where I teach that AI is the newest technology and story is the oldest. Ha ha, isn't that funny? But you have actually put together something that feels like is kind of an intersection of the oldest and newest tools.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of our StoryCycle Genie, and I was on a podcast the other day, and the host asked me, how is storytelling evolving? And I said, I don't think it is evolving. I know it's not evolving, but the storyteller is evolving. And you know this, Nick, from being in story in the brand world yourself, that the frameworks we use in storytelling have not changed appreciably since our ancestors navigated and survived the savannah using story as the first technology to create meaning out of the madness of being human beings and not getting eaten by that saber-toothed tiger. Setup, problem, resolution, the and but therefore framework. Even Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, he didn't invent it. He just recognized it and revealed it to the world. And these are the same algorithms and frameworks that we use today to speak to and connect with that Homo sapiens storytelling ape sitting across from us, because we are the only organisms that we know of that think, plan, organize, and act in story. You know, you stop to think about it. Anytime you're selling anything, you are selling a fictional account of what will happen if they buy in. Then they buy in, and then your job as the storyteller is to now pay off all of those promises you told in that fiction and make it nonfiction, make it fact. So stories here, AI is just enabling us to tell it in a more amplified, more scalable way, I think.
So say more about that. You mentioned the StoryCycle Genie, and for those unaware, just give us the quick kind of the elevator pitch, what it is, how it works, and how it might be useful.
Well, let's start 20 years ago. Very quickly, I created the StoryCycle system, and it is a way to do brand development through story. It's based off the hero's journey, inspired by it, but it's 10 steps that I have mapped to business and business growth through how you craft that brand story. And we've used it, and we've helped brands grow as much as 600% following the StoryCycle system. One of my clients, Sean Schroeder of Blue River, a digital marketing agency in Sacramento, back in 2017, showed up. And he said, we didn't know each other. He hired me. He goes, we've been trying to rebrand our agency for a year. We're too close to it. We're getting nowhere. Plus, they also have built a content management SaaS platform called Mira. And he goes, I need to brand both of them and then bring them together under one umbrella brand. So we did it. And it took us about 3 months, and we used the StoryCycle system, got through it, and then he launched it. And, lo and behold, about a year and a half later, they ended up selling both their agency and the content management platform. And he said a lot of it was because you helped us dial in our brand story. Now, fast forward a couple of years. Right after COVID, he reaches out and he goes, I love the StoryCycle system. It just takes too long to implement. AI's here. Let's build a genie, the StoryCycle Genie. So we spent 2 years taking all that IP that we know works because it's been trial tested for 20 years building brands, and we put it into an AI-driven narrative native platform. So now you can run and develop your own brand story literally in minutes versus taking months to do it. In fact, Nick, I ran your story through it, sent it to you before we did this. And all I did was took your URL for your website, gave it to the genie. I said, go visit his website, give me a brand assessment. In 2 minutes, it came back and told us how well you were telling your story. Then I said, okay, great. This is cool. Now give me the overall brand narrative strategy. And in about another 3 minutes, it created what was about a 7-page document that now reveals the brand narrative strategy as you are showing up in the world based on the StoryCycle system. So long way of saying we have democratized branding, because now what used to take months takes minutes, and you don't have to spend tens and 20s and 30s of thousands of dollars to do it anymore. It might cost you a couple of hundred.
Well, and I will say, for everyone, I get a lot of podcast pitches, and you won the day by providing something of immediate value there, because not unlike your colleague with an organization that you're too close to, but I'm a company of one at this point in everything. So I'm both too close to it and a little overwhelmed by it. Mm-hmm. And you've got the breakdown. I've got it up on my other screen over here. You've got the kind of things that you'd want to know that would be actionable for a plan as well. Key differentiators. A perfect example of this is a little thing my pandemic project was not making bread. It was illustrating my slides and a lot of the visuals that go with my brand. And I do sometimes, in that vacuum of one's own brand, wonder, is anybody actually notice that? And here in your differentiators, it's got hand-drawn illustrations and sketches as visual brand differentiator. And I'm like, okay, it's being seen. But I think that this is a fascinating way of kind of back to that. You talk about the promises, but the the minutes versus months. And that's so important with as fast as things continue to move today.
Yeah, and we call it really a wealth generation engine. And agencies in particular, agency principals are showing up and going, oh my God, I've got a team of 10 and they're all using a different AI tool and we're all trying to bring it all together. Wait, what? This sits in one brain? I go, yeah, it's the one source of truth through the StoryCycle Genie. And it's wealth. Number one is think about when you're going in to pitch a client. So I pitched you to be on your show, and thank goodness we've known each other because you've been on my show a couple times. I've been on yours. So at least we had some connection there. But I'm showing up and I'm saying, I'm going to give you some real value. Here's the brand assessment, and then here's the overall narrative strategy. Took me 6 minutes to do that, 10 minutes in total to send you that email address. Now, if you're an agency owner, think about you're going in and you are pitching a new client and you're up against 2 or 3 other agencies. And you show up with already a brand assessment, already a narrative strategy, not saying this is what we need to do, but here's value to you, prospect. Take a look at it. Let us know how accurate it is, and then we can work together and iterate on that literally in a 1 or 2 hour session, and your initial brand narrative strategy is done. So you're not spending any more money, clients, in trying to develop that brand story. It's done. You can take that money and invest it into marketing communications that's actually going to move the needle for you. And oh, by the way, for the agency, they just saved all that time and all that opportunity costs, tens of thousands of dollars of their own time doing that discovery and research. Here, you can literally do it in minutes. So it's a wealth creation engine in that it saves you time, creates a wealth of free time for you, and it certainly adds to the wealth of your ROI.
So one of the big concerns that folks have about AI tools is accuracy, but also authenticity. How are those dots connected in the StoryCycle Genie and process?
Well, we start where you are. So we've taken your website, we've looked at it. Think of it as like mirror, mirror on the wall. How am I showing up for all? And it's saying, here's how you're showing up. And you're like, cool. Okay, it got this one thing, but it totally missed this thing here that I know that I need to be talking about. Well, it means you're not talking about it effectively on your website and in your storytelling. And like, I never thought about it this way. And here's another way. It validates what you're doing well. It reveals gaps that you need to fix and can fix very quickly. And it even inspires you with new ways to tell the story. But Nick, you are iterating inside the Genie, and every time you give it a prompt, and by the way, you don't need to know any prompt engineering because we spent 2 years doing that. All you do is talk to it like you're talking to me or a marketing consultant or anybody else, and it learns you. With every iteration, it gets smarter about your tone of voice. It gets to the point that it's writing content so much from your point of voice. We've sent it, and we've tested through some of these. Is it Winston is one of those AI checkers. Was this written by AI or not? And we routinely get, this was 99% human. This is 100% human because it is writing in your voice. That's how you make it authentic. That's how it knows about you because it's starting with how you are already showing up in the world. And then you go in, clean it up, clarify it, iterate with it to just get compounding knowledge about your brand story and strength of it with every use.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
Marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We we match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
Join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
So, you're about to make a trade based on a friend's text. But which you do you listen to? Is it, oh, we could buy a house in Tulum? Get optioning those options. We could lose everything. Or, let's do a little research. Get your head in the trade and make the investment decision that's right for you. Learn more at finra.org/trade-smart.
I like it.
Now, back to the show. Well, you and our mutual friend Jay Bear are in an air band of two, because he also felt inspired to pluck an invisible instrument during our ad break.
Doop, 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 doop. Yep, absolutely.
So I'm intrigued by something you said earlier at the top of the show, and I'm always intrigued by things that, boy, that sounds really cool. And also, I don't exactly know what it means. But when you said to that question of how's storytelling changing, and I agree that I think, the stories we tell, like you said, are not fundamentally different. But say more about the storytellers change. And as we look at a new year ahead, and each year getting increasingly different, challenging in its own way, what does the future storyteller need to look like?
So they are going to look just like me and you and everybody watching and listening to this show. We are not going to change, but your ability to be able to tell stories faster and to scale them are going through the roof. Now, when I talk about a story, it is typically a recounting of something that happened, a moment in time. In fact, I might even say, don't think of it as a story, think of it as a scene, because those are the moments that gets people's attention. And you tell them to make a business point or to illustrate, a topic. Like, you're a professor. So when you are in teaching, Nick, how often are you using stories to animate an idea and to really show the impact so that your students are going to learn? They learn through that story.
Yeah, all the time. And I'm ironically, hopefully teaching them that same skill too.
And one of the biggest challenges we all have is we've got all these stories, all these little anecdotes that we've had throughout our lives, and you're never quite sure which one to pull from, or you're going to kind of fly by your seat of the pants and one will pop up. And oftentimes as a storyteller, you nail it, but sometimes you miss an opportunity. Well, AI and like the StoryCycle Genie is a place where you can also categorize, library those stories. And I've done it. I've created a library now of over 60 anecdotes that I go to and building, and I write them out. They're from blog posts. They're from my book. They're in my voice because, of course, the genie doesn't know it. It wasn't there. It doesn't experience human moments, but we all do. And so the AI and the genie is a way to collect those stories, have them in there. It'll learn more about your brand voice, your own unique author's voice by how you write the stories. But then when I'm writing a post, which used to take me 8 to 10 hours, I can do them in 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, depending on how heavy of lifting of the editing. But it will go in and it will access an anecdote or anecdotes that will make a point for me. So I've made a point here, and then it'll come back and say, Park, you've got a great thing that happened to you 2 years ago with this little anecdote that would work perfect here. I'm going to slide it in. You tell me if you like it or not. So that's one way the storyteller is scaling. So we're not having to do everything manually and by memory. And even if we write down our stories in our story library in a book somewhere, we don't have to go fishing through it. Our brand brain and the Genie now has access to all those stories and will use them at the most appropriate times. So that's one example. But the storyteller itself doesn't change. We still are talking about a moment in time when something happened that changed everything in that moment that makes our business point for us.
Well, when you talk about collecting, cataloging those stories, I think that, especially when we talk about how storytellers are changing and the need for scale, I think that that goes from a nice to have to a need to have. And as you were talking through that, talking about your 60 plus stories, I always think, and I can never quite shape the thought or comparison quite right, but I'm fascinated by the work of stand-up comedians because I think that some of the best ones, it's a pretty layered Venn diagram with being storytellers. But I think they've got really kind of material that they're working and that they can use different ways. And I really think what you're talking about, I mean, it's like step one is just as a leader learning to use story in your work to help, like you said, animate ideas, move people from a point A to a point B. But the advanced storytelling leader is one that is really developing an asset out of those stories that they can lean on in many different ways.
Yeah. Well, and let's look at your StoryCycle Genie report real quick because, and you probably recognize this being a storyteller yourself, in all the output that you get from it, it is meant to now trigger story anecdotal assets in you, the human being, that you will use to infuse the Genie with your stories. So for instance, it starts with the number one audience, your three primary audiences, because every story begins with who's this story about. So it says in your case, corporate leaders and executives, and then it goes and it talks about 4 categories of emotional triggers: challenges, fears, frustrations, and aspirations. And in this case, it says their challenges: leading teams through complex organizational change while maintaining authentic communication that builds trust and drives results. Is that accurate to you and your brand and what you're doing?
Eerily so.
Okay. Fears: appearing inauthentic or manipulative when trying to inspire teams, losing credibility through poor communication during critical moments. Frustrations: most communication training is either too theoretical to implement or too simplistic to handle sophisticated business challenges. And aspirations: what do they want? Becoming the kind of leader who naturally connects with any audience, inspires genuine commitment to organizational vision. So we are teaching the Genie, and the Genie is looking and learning and saying, okay, these are the triggers, these are the motivators that you are going to story around to attract this particular audience. And oh, by the way, I want you to start thinking about stories and anecdotes that you can tell to overcome their challenges, their fears, their frustrations, and to play to their aspirations. So story element asset development, number one, starts with the very first step of identifying your protagonist. And then it goes on, it does the same thing for your second audience, marketing and brand professionals, and then third, conference and event organizers. Then it creates an ABT statement that becomes a foundational statement for each of those, built off of that framework, the and, but, therefore, of setup, problem, resolution. But let's jump ahead. And it gives you a positioning statement, and it gives you a unique value proposition. But now this is the part, Nick, I really love. And it's something that I created when I first did the StoryCycle Genie and found it to be an immensely powerful exercise. It's called your brand personality traits, or the OOH exercise. OOOH exercise. OOH stands for organization, offering, and outcomes. And what the Genie does is creates 3 descriptors for each one of those categories. So for instance, your organization, the company, you as the brand, systematic, bridging, and authentic. Those are the three words. And then it gives you a little description below each of them. Like, let's just take bridging, for instance. Nick's organizational approach connects previously separate domains, academic, corporate, entertainment, to create comprehensive solutions that address the full spectrum of storytelling needs. I want to stop there because I have yet to see bridging come up on one of these. And I've run over 200 brands through the Genie, and I thought that was awesome. So is that accurate to what you do?
Yes, and actually, it's interesting that it's not come up there, and that as using this as an actionable document makes me think there's more that I need to do around, or maybe, I mean, this is how it's perceived, but I think really pushing that too.
So that word bridging in that description is what you do, what you make. What people care about is what you make happen. So what I would ask you to do, and anybody watching and listening to this, is you take that word bridging as a theme, and then I want you to come up with 3 real world anecdotes that shows that bridging in action. Because it doesn't mean anything if you sit there as a brand and said, we're really great at bridging. People go, huh? Okay, whatever. But you say, let me show you how we bring academic, corporate, and entertainment together. I'm going to tell you the story about Joe. You're going to take us to a moment in time when that all clicked for Joe and what that outcome was. And so that your audience now can see it. You're showing them it in action through storytelling. All we're doing and the Genie is doing here is giving you the story prompts. And then you can go, and of course, if any one of those didn't resonate with you, you can change it. You could say, I like systematic, but it sounds a little stiff. Give me a synonym that is a little bit more free-flowing or whatever. It'll give you 4 or 5 options. You go, boy, I really like option 2. I want to replace it with that. Boom, it goes in there, automatically goes in the Genie's brain. And now you, as the Homo sapiens storytelling ape, need to come up with the little anecdotal stories that demonstrate that in action.
I love that. And, as we're here talking about this, and it's such a valuable process, a valuable document, as we're talking about it, 1 year is wrapping up, a new one is ahead. And at the risk of sounding like an advertisement for the process, I would think this would be a good time for organizations to kind of take a look at that and get some useful perspective on their brand and what they're putting out into the world.
Well, and they can go and get a free brand story assessment. We call it the Brand Story Grader. And you run your website through it. It takes all of 60 seconds. It is going to give you a grade from A+ to F-, depending on how well you are telling your story. And then it's going to give you a 14-point assessment. That, again, is going to validate what you're doing well, reveal gaps, and even provide some insights of, other ways to potentially tell your story and what the next steps are to go and fix it. And you can do that for nothing at StoryCycleGenie.ai. And if you do nothing between now and January 1, do that, because it's going to just get you to start thinking about your story and how you're showing up in the world.
Well, you stole what was going to be my final question there. If there's one thing to do, and I think that's a pretty good thing, because you can go somewhere, get something valuable that can help you do even more things as well.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, and I think that you have a brand that has made you smile recently that might have some resonance.
Yeah. Okay. So I just came back from Washington, D.C. I live out here in northern Arizona. I was working with Navy Federal Credit Union, their in-house auditing department. So I had 110 auditors in a room, Nick, and I worked with them for a day on storytelling. So it was awesome. And I will say that brand gave me a big smile because they were amazing to work with. And, their tagline is, our members are the mission. And I could see that throughout that group of people, and they talked about it a lot. So that gave me a smile. But let me give you one other one, because I'm flying back home on United Airlines, and I'm in first class because I just was exhausted 5 hours back here. And this was a smile turned upside down, if you will, because it was kind of this old beat up airplane. They had the exit light was hanging by cords from the ceiling in first class. I hit my head on it twice going to take a leak, basically. The food was all right, whatever. And then I got on, I paid my $10 for the internet connection. It was spotty at best. It came and went. But to their credit, when I got home, they credited back my Amex card for the $10 because they apparently knew how crappy that internet was. So Navy Federal Credit Union put a big smile on my face. United put a grimace, if you will, because I mean, talking about what poor brand storytelling than having the freaking exit sign, hanging a foot below from the cable and swinging back and forth for 5 hours.
And it stands kind of apart too from, people wanting to suggest, dressing up for airline travel. And it's like, yeah. I heard back to a stand-up comedian, I think it was Michelle Wolf, that said, we are dressing for the airline service that we have, not what we wish we had. And I think when you describe the hanging exit sign, that is that paints a picture.
Well, and remember, that thing is swinging back and forth like a pendulum on a grandfather clock at 30,000 feet. What does that say about the rest of the technology on that plane?
Okay. Yeah. And I know too, after the end of work, and flying home, I have frequently gotten myself the first class, but I always have to think, because the plane for that last flight going back to Iowa is usually not what one would expect for first class. So
a little bit smaller.
Yes. So,
and by the way, I'm glad you don't work for Iowa State, because they just stole my football coach from WSU. So I'm glad you're at Iowa.
Well, there we go. All right. So we've mentioned it a couple of times, but as we wrap up, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Well, thebusinessofstory.com is my website, so that's a great place to go. I'm on LinkedIn at Park Howell. I think maybe I'm the only Park Howell there. I'm easy to find there. Come and check it out, and let's connect there. And then, of course, if there's one thing you want to do before the end of the year, get your free brand story assessment at StoryCycleGenie.ai. You're going to love it. It'll be amazing.
Awesome. Those were all easy places to go. If you need something even easier, you'll be able to find all of those links at onbrandpodcast.com. Park Howell, thanks for being on brand with us.
Nick Westergaard, thanks for having me.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.